I stopped paying for my brother's life on a Tuesday. Not dramatically, not with a speech. I just logged into my bank account, looked at the recurring transfers, and deleted them one by one. It took maybe 4 minutes. 4 minutes to undo 6 years of being the family's ATM with a pulse. Let me back up. My name is Ivy. I'm 31 years old. I work in supply chain logistics. Not glamorous, but it pays well, and I've always been careful with money. I grew up watching my parents stress about bills. So the moment I landed my first real job out of college, I told myself I would never live like that. I built an emergency fund. I maxed out my 401k. I meal prepped on Sundays. I drove the same Honda Civic for 9 years because it ran fine and I had better things to do with money than impress strangers. My brother Colton is 3 years older than me. He has never once in his adult life made a decision that wasn't impulsive. He married his college girlfriend, Petra, 6 months after graduation because she got pregnant and his parents, our parents, told him it was the right thing to do. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because that decision set off a chain of events that I spent the next decade cleaning up, financially. Colton worked in sales. Sometimes well, mostly not. He had a gift for convincing people he was doing great right up until the moment everything collapsed. Petra didn't work. That was their arrangement, which I only found out about years into it. They had 2 kids by the time Colton was 27. A house they stretched to afford in a suburb 40 minutes from our parents. A lifestyle built on credit cards and optimism, and eventually me. It started small. It always does, right? The first time was a car repair. Colton called me on a Thursday night and said his transmission had gone out and he needed $800 or he couldn't get to work Monday. I had $800 or he couldn't get to work Monday. I had $800. I said yes. He paid me back in 3 installments over 4 months, which I thought was fine. Responsible even. I remember thinking, okay, he's trying. The second time was their water heater. Then a hospital bill when Petra had a complication during her second pregnancy. Then a month of their mortgage when Colton's commission check got delayed. Each time there was a reason. Each time there was a reason was real enough that I couldn't say no without feeling like a monster. And here's the thing nobody talks about when you're the responsible one in a family. Saying no feels like a personal failing, like you're proving you don't actually love them, like you're choosing money over people. My mother had this way of phrasing requests that made every loan sound like a moral test I was being given. Your brother needs help. Not Colton is asking. Your brother needs help. The implication being, and you have it to give, so what kind of person are you? I passed every test. I gave every time. By the time I turned 28, I had given or loaned my brother's family somewhere north of $40,000. I say loaned loosely. I had a spreadsheet. Not because I'm cold, because I had to know. I needed to see the number clearly so I could stop lying to myself about what was happening. $40,000, that's a down payment on a house. That's 2 years of my retirement contributions. That's money I earned working 60-hour weeks while Colton and Petra took their kids to Disney World, twice, by the way, on a credit card that my parents co-signed. I want to be fair. Colton wasn't malicious. He's not a bad person, exactly. He's just the kind of person who genuinely believes things will work out, so he never prepares for when they don't, and when they don't, he calls me. And I answer. The thing that broke it open wasn't dramatic. It never is. My company had a conference in Nashville that May. I'd been angling for a promotion, and my manager had dropped hints that this conference mattered. The right people would be there. I needed to show up, network, be visible. I'd been saving for a new interview suit and a couple of nicer outfits for the dinners. Nothing extravagant. Maybe $300 total. 2 weeks before Nashville, my mother called. She started with the weather. She always starts with the weather. Then she asked about my job, which meant she was building to something. Then she said, Colton's having a hard time right now, which was code for, get ready. Petra's car had finally died. Not repairable. They needed a replacement. Something reliable for the kids, for school pickups and Petra's errands. They'd found something reasonable at a used lot. $4,500. They'd put $2,000 down if I could cover the rest. $2,500. 2 weeks before Nashville. I said I had to think about it. My mother paused the way she always paused when I didn't immediately say yes. This long-waited silence that had, "I raised you better than this," built into it. Then she said, "Of course. Take your time." Which meant, "You have until tomorrow." I didn't sleep well that night. I ran the numbers. I looked at my savings. I could do it and still go to Nashville technically, but it would wipe out the buffer I'd been building. I told myself I'd think about it in the morning. In the morning, Colton called. I should have known it was going to go wrong from his tone. He wasn't apologetic the way he usually was when he needed money. He was casual, almost breezy. He said, "Hey, so Mom told you about the car thing. I figured you'd be in since you always come through." He laughed a little. "You're literally the only one of us who has it together." I don't know why that sentence hit me the way it did. Maybe because it was delivered like a compliment, but it was actually just an expectation. Like my having it together existed for his convenience. Like my discipline and my years of careful choices were just a resource he was entitled to draw from. I said, "Colton, I need to ask you something." He said, "Sure." I said, "Do you know how much I've given you and Petra over the last 6 years?" Silence. I said, "I have a spreadsheet. It's $42,300, not counting this." More silence. Then he said, "I mean, we've paid some of that back." I said, 11,000. "You've paid back 11,000. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Ivy, I didn't realize it was that much. We always intended to pay it back, and I believed him actually. I think he genuinely had no idea, because when you're the one receiving help, you experience each instance individually, each loan as its own isolated event. When you're the one giving, you see the cumulative total every time you open your bank account. I told him I couldn't do the 2,500. I told him I had the Nashville conference, and I needed to be financially okay for it because it mattered for my career. I told him, and this is the part that clearly didn't land, that I'd been supporting his family for 6 years, and I needed to pause. He said he understood. He did not understand. My mother called that evening. Not to yell, she never yells, to explain. She explained that Petra needed the car for the kids. She explained that Colton was really trying. She explained that I had more flexibility than they did, which was true, but which also was starting to feel like a reason I was supposed to be punished for making good choices. She said, "You'll be glad you helped when things settle down for them." I asked her when she thought that would be. She didn't answer. I asked her if she and my father could help. She said they were on a fixed income. They had taken a cruise to Bermuda in March. I didn't say that out loud. I thought it, wrote it in my journal, then set the journal down. I said I was sorry I couldn't do it this time. She said, "I hope you know what this means for your brother's family." I said goodnight and hung up. Nashville was fine. I got the promotion. I came home to 17 missed calls split between my mother, Colton, and one from my father, which almost never happened. I had 3 voicemails. The words "disappointed" and "family sticks together" appeared in 2 of them. I listened to all 3 once, then deleted them. The car situation resolved. Of course it did. Colton put it on a credit card with a high interest rate which cost him more in the long run. I tried not to think about that. For a few weeks, things were quiet. My mother was cool with me on the phone. Colton didn't call at all. I noticed I was sleeping better. I wasn't waking up at 3 a.m. running numbers. I wasn't dreading my phone. Then Colton's son's graduation came up. Marcus, my nephew, graduated from 8th grade in June. This sounds like a small thing, and it is. Technically, 8th grade graduation is not exactly a milestone event, but in my family, it had been transformed into a celebration. Petra had rented a private room at a restaurant. There would be 30-something people, a cake, a photo booth, apparently, a slideshow. My mother called to make sure I was coming. I said, of course, he's my nephew, I love him. What I didn't know, what nobody told me, because apparently it was assumed, was that I was expected to pay for it. I found this out when Petra texted me a Venmo request for $480 3 days before the party. The note said, "Your share of Marcus's graduation dinner. Thanks." 2 exclamation points. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. I called Colton. He answered on the second ring. I said, "Did you ask me if I wanted to contribute before adding me to a bill?" He said, "I mean, we figured you'd want to." Your family, I said. Colton, was I ever consulted about this? He said. Petra handled the planning. I said, was I asked before being charged? He said, it's Marcus's graduation, Ivy. He's your nephew. I said, he is, and I would have happily bought him a gift and come to celebrate him. I was not asked if I wanted to split a restaurant bill for 30 people. Colton's voice shifted slightly. Why are you making this difficult? That word, difficult. Like the problem was my expectation of basic communication. Like wanting to be consulted before being invoiced was some kind of personality defect. I said, I'm not paying the Venmo request. I'll bring Marcus a gift. Colton said, fine, and hung up. My mother called 4 minutes later. She did not ask what happened. She had clearly already been briefed. She said, I understand you're refusing to help with Marcus's party. I said, I'm refusing to pay a bill I was never asked about. She said, this is a pattern with you, Ivy. I said, what pattern is that? She said, pulling back when family needs you. I thought about the $42,000. I thought about the water heater and the hospital bill and the mortgage payment and the 6 years of being the backstop for every crisis, large and small. I thought about Nashville and the 3 voicemails. I said, Mom, I have given Colton's family over $40,000 in the last 6 years. She was quiet. I said, I'm not pulling back from family. I'm declining to fund a party I wasn't invited to plan. She said, that's not how family works. I said, I disagree. She said she'd talk to me later. She did not sound like she believed that. I went to Marcus's graduation. I brought him $200 in a card, a book he'd mentioned wanting, and his favorite candy. He was thrilled. He hugged me. We took a picture. It was a nice moment. At the party, I was seated at the far end of the table. Not the wrong end, the far end. The table where the cousins who never come were sitting. 2 people I barely knew, and one of Petra's aunts who talked exclusively about her knee surgery. My mother was at the main table with Colton and Petra and the closer family members. There was a slideshow. Marcus thanked his parents in his little speech. He thanked his grandparents. He thanked his teachers. He did not thank me, which is fine. He's 14 and shouldn't have to navigate adult financial dynamics. But nobody else mentioned me either. Not once. At the end of the night, Petra gathered people to split the remaining bill for drinks. She went around the table. She skipped me without looking up. I drove home. I sat in my car in my parking garage for a while. I wasn't crying. I was just very, very tired. I opened my spreadsheet. I looked at the number for a long time. $42,300, 6 years. And somehow, I had become the difficult one. The next morning, I made 3 decisions. First, I canceled the automatic transfer I'd set up to send my parents $200 a month. I'd started it 3 years ago when my father had some medical expenses and it had just continued. Neither of them had ever acknowledged it or asked about it. I'm not sure they knew it was happening. Now it was stopping. Second, I sent Colton a letter. Not a text. A letter. Mailed. It was 2 pages. I listed, calmly and without anger, what I had given over 6 years. I said I loved him. I said I loved Marcus and his younger sister. I said I was not disappearing from their lives. I said I was no longer available as a financial resource and I needed him to make arrangements accordingly. I said I had been glad to help during genuine emergencies, but that I could not continue to be the default plan. Third, I called my mother. She answered, and before she could say anything, I said, Mom, I need you to hear something, and I need you to let me finish. She said, okay. I said, I've been supporting Colton's family for 6 years. $42,000. You've known about most of it because you've often been the one calling me. I don't regret helping during real emergencies. But I'm not able to keep doing this, and I'm not the problem for stopping. Silence. I said, I don't need you to apologize. I don't need you to agree with me. I just need you to understand that I'm not being difficult. I'm being done. She said, Ivy, I said, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up. Colton called twice that week. I didn't answer. Not because I was punishing him. Because I had nothing new to say, and I knew the call would just be another version of the same conversation we've been having for years. He texted on day 4. It said, Got your letter. I didn't know it was that much. I really didn't. I wrote back, I know. He texted, I don't know how to fix this. I wrote, you don't have to fix anything with me, just stop asking. He didn't respond for a week. Then he sent a photo of Marcus at his first day of high school, backpack on, grinning. No message, just the photo. I saved it. My mother and I talked 2 weeks later. She didn't apologize exactly. That's not really her mode, but she said, I think we leaned on you too much, which, from her, is significant. I said thank you. She asked if I was coming for Thanksgiving. I said yes, if it's just dinner. She said, of course it's just dinner. We left it there. Here's what I know now. When you are the capable one in a family, you will be treated like a capability, not a person, unless you draw the line yourself. Nobody draws it for you. Nobody looks up from their own life and says, actually, we've been taking too much. They don't, because they don't have to. You've never made them have to. The $42,000 is gone. I've accepted that. Some of it I'll get back in installments, probably. Most of it I won't. What I got back instead was my Friday nights, which I used to spend anxious and calculating. My Sunday mornings, when I used to dread the weekly call. The low-grade hum of financial anxiety that had become so constant I'd stopped noticing it was there until the day it went quiet. I didn't blow up my family. I didn't give a speech. I didn't post anything online. I just decided, quietly, that being loved by my family couldn't cost more than I was able to give, and that a love that required me to deplete myself wasn't actually love. It was a subscription I'd never agreed to. I canceled it, and for the first time in 6 years, when my phone rings on a Thursday night, I feel nothing but curious. I've thought a lot about why it took me 6 years. Not why I helped. I know why I helped. I helped because I loved my brother, and because I was raised to believe that family is the one thing you don't walk away from when it gets hard. I helped because every single request came wrapped in a real emergency, and real emergencies don't wait for you to think clearly. I helped because saying no felt like a character flaw, not a boundary. But I've thought about the cost of that. Not the $42,000. That number I can look at now without flinching. I mean the other cost. The version of me that spent 6 years being quietly anxious, quietly resentful, quietly disappearing inside a role I never actually agreed to play. Here's what I understand now that I didn't then. When you consistently absorb the consequences of someone else's choices, you don't help them grow. You just make it comfortable for them not to. Colton didn't know the total was $42,000. That's not cruelty. That's what happens when someone has never been asked to face the full weight of what they've taken. I made it easy for him not to look. Every transfer I sent was a message that said, don't worry, I've got it. And he believed me. Why wouldn't he? The moment I stopped, the accounting became visible. That's not punishment. That's just what reality looks like when you stop cushioning it. What I had to reckon with, the harder thing, was my own part in it. I kept helping past the point where it made sense because I needed to see myself as the person who shows up. I needed that identity, the capable one, the responsible one, the one who comes through. There's a quiet pride in that role, even when it's draining you. Because at least you know who you are. When I stopped, I had to figure out who I was without it. That took longer than canceling the transfers. But here's what I found on the other side of that. Integrity doesn't mean sacrificing yourself indefinitely. It means being honest with others and with yourself about what you can genuinely give without building resentment underneath it. Real generosity has a bottom. When you give past that bottom, you're not being generous anymore. You're being afraid. I wasn't helping Colton because I was strong. I was helping because I was afraid of what my family would think if I stopped. That's not the same thing, and it took a Venmo request with 2 exclamation points at the end to finally make me see it clearly. Colton texted me a photo of Marcus on his first day of high school. No words. Just the photo. I saved it. That's the version of this relationship I want. The real one, not the financial one. Not the one where I'm the backstop and he's the permanent emergency. Just 2 siblings who actually see each other. I don't know if we get there. But I know we can't get there any other way than this.